God, I'm so tired. Ever since I've gotten back to school, I've had to juggle a part-time job, I have to worry about paying off the interest for my loans, and just in general have to apply to jobs to make sure I can become a functional adult once I graduate. Which is mostly just stressful, and God, if I could just get rid of having to do the job or getting rid of my loans, then I would just be so financially better off to prepare for the... I think someone just slipped something under my door. What the hell is this? It has a number on the back of it, and it has nothing else. There's no company name or anything else, and just suddenly appears once I'm talking about my financial issues. I'm too black for this. Hello media lovers, my name is Maya, but you can just call me Media Head. I've got a really twisted fact about myself to share today. I love death games. They're my favorite unofficial subgenre of media, probably because I just love character-driven stories more than plot-driven ones. And what's more character-driven than having a whole bunch of characters being put in high-stress situations where they can't trust others or themselves? As a result, when my parents said offhand that they were just casually watching this Korean death game TV show revolving around children's games, I immediately wanted in. And then 24 hours later it blew up and the entire internet knew about it. Still, I wanted to try my hands at a TV review as opposed to a movie review for once, and this just gives me an excuse to talk about the specific benefits and pitfalls of death game media. Unsurprisingly, this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you want to avoid those, just put this video in your watch later folder. You have that, right? You do remember that you have that on YouTube. And come back to this once you're done. It's worth it, I promise. Also, before I continue, I hereby apologize in advance for my awful pronunciation of Korean names. The premise for Squid Game is already enough to pull anyone in. To be fair, for me, Death Game is enough to pull me in, but for everyone else, Death Game revolving around children's games with a cash prize sounds enticing, and just a little bit weird. Episode 2 is what really sold this concept for me, mainly because it explored something that I've never really seen a death game do, at least not in the media I consume, by letting the victims go. And for Squid Game, this is brilliant. It explores this concept that desperate people will put themselves in terrible situations if there's a promise of their suffering being rewarded. Not to mention, I've seen people bring up that in-universe, the simple act of letting the contestants go makes it way harder for them to be tracked down. I mean, we saw what happened. Gi-hoon goes to the police station and his story makes no sense when said aloud. So it proves that these people won't get caught. Onto the overall plot, let me just begin by saying that I love how the death games were designed. From wits to pure luck, we get to see the whole range of what a death game can throw at a player in this case. And due to the nature of them being based off children's games, you can watch somebody say, oh, this is how I'd do this and how I'd survive it, without making them inherently sound so pretentious. Yes, Patricia, your strategy is so brilliant. You would totally survive Battle Royale with that. And while it took me a while to get invested, I grew to love the side plot with Junho. Considering what happens to him, he comes across as more than a plot device than a character, but through that plot device, we get to see the inner workings of these games and how they operate, how this hierarchy works. Not to mention, his death actually kind of hammered home the idea that this game used to hurt people and entertain rich people really can't be stopped. There's really only one issue I had with Squid Game, and it's found in a lot of death game media: predictability and missed opportunities. This is especially true of games like Squid Game, which are being used to tell a specific message as opposed to just be a death game. In episode 6, which is probably the second best episode in the series after episode 2, in my opinion, Squid Game misses a major opportunity between Sang-woo and Ali. Admittedly, this is because I just personally like Ali more as a person, but it would have been extremely interesting if they actually had Ali win and Sang-woo die in that episode. Not only would having Sang-woo, this callous and more relentless player who is literally just a white-collar version of Gi-hoon, lose to Ali, just subvert expectations, but it would also put Ali in this strange place in the games. My major issue with Sang-woo and Ali's game in the episode was that Sang-woo was so, in my opinion, obviously desperate and manipulative that it felt like Ali should have known that he was being played. So having Ali realize that and as a result kill him probably through manipulation himself, motivated by the fact that he has a wife and child to save and go back to, would have made him exactly what the games wanted him to be. Considering this is right after he indirectly killed a whole bunch of people in tug of war, Ali as the big guy in the group would have been an absolute nightmare to deal with if he was now at this point where he was willing to kill and manipulate. As for Sang-woo, it would be a double message of how his methods always come back to bite you in the end. Not to mention, no matter how much you try to play by society's, in this case the Squid Game's rules, by becoming this more callous and relentless player, it's still going to absolutely take you out in the end. But the foils gotta do their narrative job, so Ali gets bullets in the head. Also, I just don't like how they used Gi-hoon in the end. It was the easy way out to have him turn around and go and try to end the Squid Game, but to be honest, the show doesn't really give me a reason to think that Gi-hoon is the person to end the Squid Game. Some people have argued that because we've seen that Gi-hoon will fight for justice, both in the flashback protest that he was involved in, as well as helping out his co-worker as he lay dying, and the fact that he was willing to even spare Sang-woo's life trying to end the game at the very end, he's still not that abnormal of a guy? You're telling me in the history of these Squid Games over decades that not a single other person had a sense of justice and happened to win like Gi-hoon? Like, I just don't buy it. And Squid Game honestly makes this harder to believe, considering they suggest that they convince previous winners to come back and be the front man. I don't know, Gi-hoon just doesn't seem like the type of guy who'd be able to bring down the Squid Game no matter how motivated he is. Though if they bring back previous winners who are secretly trying to end it themselves as well and Gi-hoon teams up with them or something in the next season, consider this point null and void. I will officially declare this just not part of the scoring. On top of that, and this is going to sound kind of sick, Squid Game feels better suited to be an anthology series, probably in reverse chronological order so we see the other games, and we get to explore, say, other characters who are put in different situations that would result in them being in debt and desperate for money. Still, the overall concept of the Squid Game and the message that the show Squid Game meant to convey is like 80% of the show anyway, and they conveyed that very well. And they did it in a way that kept me invested the whole way through. 8 out of 10. In my opinion, every death game needs actual characters for you to get emotionally invested in so that it has a better impact on the audience. Otherwise, you get the majority of the Saw franchise. Gi-hoon is the perfect kind of main character for this kind of series. He doesn't have as sympathetic a motivation as the other characters here. We see that he has major issues in the form of a very intense gambling addiction, even using a claw machine to try to get his daughter's gift as opposed to just buying a gift. But we also see that he clearly has a sense of right and wrong and tries to cater to the right thing most of the time. He feeds the cat, he celebrates with the kid, he does get a gift for his daughter, and he has, again, a sense of justice. He brings Ali into his group specifically as thanks for saving him and actively calls out the fact that he saved him. And whenever he can, he stands up for 001 because no one else is. Hope that doesn't get ironic later. His main problem is that he doesn't really take responsibility for his actions, and that's just what character development's for, so that's not a writing problem. Speaking of characters who refuse to take responsibility for their own actions, Sung-woo reminded me why character foils make for good writing. While I still feel like they missed a major opportunity with not killing him earlier in the game than expected, I understand why they kept him alive till the end. He gets crueler and crueler with which game, being willing to sacrifice his childhood friend as early as the Honeycomb game. His reasoning for doing so is to not let every other awful action he's done go to waste by stopping now, which a lot of people can tell you is just a slippery slope into madness and probably depression and, well, even his own death at the end is in defiance of the idea that he's responsible for his actions. A lot of people have debated why he offed himself, and my personal opinion, he refused to let all of it be for nothing again. He wasn't doing this to help Gi-hoon, he was doing it so that he wouldn't have to face himself by going home with nothing after everything he's done. Otherwise, he would just be a murderer. And then there's the big bad. Oh Il-nam, in my opinion, is a great villain, especially for Squid Game. There's this video by another YouTuber called Schaeferless Productions, who I absolutely love. Go check him out if you're into very snarky commentary. That brings up points as to why Oh Il-nam being revealed to be a villain contributes to a disappointing finale. And while I do think that video is very well done and well made, I do have to respectfully disagree with quite a few points in it. While I do agree that the scene in Il-nam's room should have gone differently, with Gi-hoon exploiting the obvious loophole and helping out the homeless guy, ending the cycle of wealthier people using homeless people as props for an agenda, I do think that the reason Il-nam makes this bed in the first place is a great example as to why he's extremely unsympathetic and a terrible person. Between being an old man, slowly dying of something that he can't control, and being genuinely nice to Gi-hoon throughout the entirety of the series, it gives off this impression that he's this guy who genuinely thinks that he's helping out these poor people by giving them a chance. Which makes me freaking hate him! Villains like Il-nam are some of my personal favorites. They're the type of people who simultaneously think that they're doing the right thing and are aware that their true goal is selfish and, in Il-nam's case, childish. The ones who know they're doing something awful but justify it to themselves by saying, well, I'm also doing something good by doing this, or I'm having the right mindset about it, so that balances out, right? Going back to episode 6, because that episode is loaded, the game between him and Gi-hoon is the perfect representation of what kind of person he is. I know that this is an extremely unpopular opinion, or at least in the circles I've been around, but the moment that Il-nam revealed that he was faking his dementia for those past 30 minutes, just wandering around and letting Gi-hoon think that he was completely out of it, made me wanna hit him. He was willing to waive Gi-hoon's life in front of him for 30 freaking minutes, wandering the place, forcing Gi-hoon to chase after him, scaring the hell out of him, and then just let him live. He only lived because he said so. That's absolutely fucked up, and I'm surprised that more people weren't talking about that. I could not understand how people were just letting this slide. That's a horrible thing to do to someone, no matter what the context. Long story short, Oh Il-nam is a very well done execution of the master manipulator / man-child villain archetype, being willing to participate in his own games and being willing to die by them, just so he can explore his childhood whimsy again, and in the end, really refused to admit that he had done anything wrong. The other characters in the series are varying degrees of complex, though not given nearly as much importance as the three I just mentioned, in my opinion. Though one glance at the fandom makes you know that all of them have a mini cult following. As I said, in my opinion, is less of a character and more of a plot device, but the other characters are luckily given a lot more complexity than wanting to find his brother because that's his brother. Jae-il is a badass, competent character who's just downright fun to watch, and every word out of her mouth is gold. And she's an interesting exploration of the fact that just because you escape a terrible situation doesn't mean that you're in the clear. Ali, with his heart of gold and very intimidating physical strength, is obviously a fan favorite. Go watch any reaction to any Squid Game episode and you're going to see people tripping all over themselves to mention how much they love him. I love you. Jung, despite appearing in only 2 episodes, left a major impact with her deadpan snarker attitude and exploring the issues faced by ex-prisoners going out into the real world. Also thoroughly traumatizing us. She did that too. And Minyo, who I called Karen for most of the series, is insane and therefore a delight to watch. Just watching her antics is simultaneously infuriating and hilarious, even when she's being a horrible racist and xenophobe to our best boy Ali. And just that one moment, just yes. What I'm saying is, Squid Game's characters are amazing. I do think that they could have had more done to them in the characterization department, but that is a restraint of being a TV show. When it comes to death games, video games probably have them all beat when it comes to characterization. So non-interactive media will stumble a little bit in making their large cast of characters appealing to the audience instead of simply entertaining. But that's just my opinion. They're still absolutely amazing, enough to give them a 9 out of 10. Admittedly, in my opinion, analyzing acting in media in a language you do not understand is more difficult, but from what I can tell, all the actors did a great job bringing their characters to life. This is especially impressive considering, based on what their IMDb pages show, a lot of these actors are just starting out. Lee Jung-jae and Park Hae-soo were already big Korean actors when they took these roles, so I'm honestly not surprised that they were able to bring all of these expressive, emotive moments to Gi-hun and Sang-woo respectively. But then you've got Anuman Tripathi, whose role as Ali is the second named role he's ever done. Chung Ho-yeon, who's better known as a model, taking on the grungy, far more serious, and beat up Jae-il as a role. And of course you have the man himself, Oh Young-soo, who after playing a monk in several plays, ended up capturing this master manipulator perfectly somehow. And side note, fun fact, apparently after Squid Game came out, he became overwhelmed by calls from people who wanted him to be in their stuff, and because he's never needed an agent before, he kind of doesn't know what to do. Apparently this wasn't a coincidence. Director Hwang Dong-hyuk really wanted to give a chance to these lesser known actors who were just getting started or just never really gotten as far as the other actors in his production. And I love it when directors and producers do that. It gives people a chance to actually become known in the industry that they're a part of. Also, semi-controversial opinion again, I like the acting for the VIPs. It is definitely over the top, but 1, we know people sound like that, we know who Trump is, and 2, these are over-the-top rich men who made a death game because they were so rich that they couldn't find anything to satiate their boredom. They're going to be extra. Not to mention, one of my favorite death game franchises has a villain whose motivation is also boredom and is this bitch. Kamakura, Kamakura, yes, queen! So I can say nothing. 10 out of 10. I'm going to be keeping an eye on these actors' names so that if they come up in something again, I'll be watching it. A rule of thumb I live by for stuff like this is if the soundtrack gives me PTSD, then it's probably well executed. I can never listen to classical music ever again. Using music everybody knows is a gamble, especially if it's classical. I know that firsthand, but in this case, it's a very familiar song for a show revolving around very familiar children's games, so it actually kinda matches up. As for the rest of the music, Pink Soldiers haunts my nightmares. I love a good character, or group of characters, I guess, theme as much as the next person, but why did you have to make it sound like that? It's a good song, I just hate it anyway. I had to go back through the episodes to see if there was any other music outside of the intro, which is good as well, by the way. And there honestly isn't much. The show has pretty good restraints when it comes to knowing when to not use music, which is a skill that, as somebody who's still learning, I'm still learning. So it's really nice to see an example of when not to use music in order to make a shot just flow naturally. As for the rest of the sound design, it's good. It's not extraordinary, but it doesn't have to be. It's kind of like Over the Moon, where you don't notice it, so you know that they did their jobs well, but that also means that I can't justify giving it a really high score. Not to mention, Squid Game isn't a musical. I don't want to know what a Squid Game musical would be like. So unlike Over the Moon, it doesn't have that extra hurdle that they have to jump over. And as for that, I'm going to give them a point lower than Over the Moon for sound and music. 7 out of 10. Let's see, we've got the fact that the characters outside of the death game are always cast in shadow, kind of representing how they're overlooked by society. It's not like I like symbolism or anything. We've got the color pink all over the place, usually a color representing happiness or some sort of joy, but is being used here probably for the same reason that kids' games are being used here. We've got overhead shots, which I am weak for. We've got the dehumanizing tracksuits as well as the design of the friggin' warehouse where they stay in, which is apparently meant to represent the idea of them being products on a shelf, of courtesy of the friggin' designer of whose name I'm going to be putting on screen because I forgot to actually look up the pronunciation for it. My god, Squid Game holds nothing back. Also, whoever did the makeup, I don't know who did the makeup. I couldn't find a makeup artist anywhere in the credits or IMDb or anywhere. Did a great job making all the characters look, well, terrible. While they're still obviously good-looking people in the show, I was surprised to learn that Lee Jung-ji and Jung Ho-yeon are models outside of their acting careers, because my god, did they look terrible here. From the front man's golden and black room to the hopscotch area to the quiet streets of Gi-hoon's hometown, the set design honestly might be my favorite thing about Squid Game outside of its message. If they just hadn't done that awful, awful red hair for Gi-hoon at the end of the series, then this would have been a perfect score. But I don't care. For once in my life, I don't care if it's symbolic or something. Get that thing off of the screen, get it away from here. Why does he have that hair color? 9 out of 10. And finally, overall enjoyment. While I'll go on record saying that Squid Game isn't my new favorite death game, it has taken the crown from Battle Royale and Hunger Games for becoming my favorite politically driven death game. Squid Game's scripts got rejected over and over and over during an already happening economic crisis, and now over the years that's gotten not only worse but worldwide, it makes sense that it finally got greenlit and made today. One thing, the second episode is what separates Squid Game from other death games, especially of the political variety. Showing us this sick illusion of choice being given to the players that causes them to come back is what makes this series feel downright disturbing because of how realistic it is. Not to mention Battle Royale, Hunger Games, that one video game where if you know me, you know what I'm talking about, but I'm not gonna say the name because that's a big spoiler. They all have their death game sets as part of normal society. It's something that everyone knows about and in some cases want to participate in. But Squid Game is set in the modern day. Not only in the modern day, but specifically using a population where in most countries, people disappear all the time and no one notices. It paints this terrifying idea that Squid Game not only could happen, but might be happening right now. And none of us would know unless you were a wealthy business person. Not to mention, taking a step back from me mentioning the horrific idea of watching all these people suffer for your own amusement, Squid Game's a fun show to watch. The games are simple to understand. Obviously, the games were literally made by and for children. And I want to know more about the other games. I want to know what they plan on doing now that one of their VIPs is dead. Do they just stop going to Korea for their Squid Games, or do they rope another rich Korean man into this? How did In-ho end up as the front man? Is he the only winner who does this, or did he for some reason take on the position? Also, what happened to... because definitely didn't kill him. And finally, seriously, what does Gi-hoon plan on doing to end the freaking Squid Games? And sure, I thought that there were elements that could have been better explored and plot details that could have been just better done or done differently to be more interesting, but it was still a good time, and a thought-provoking existential death game is probably exactly what I needed right now. 9 out of 10. With a 52 out of 60, that's an 86.6 repeating percent, which is the highest score we've gotten so far in this channel. If you like death games, social commentary, or Gong-yu in a suit, my god, was the internet that excited about seeing Gong-yu in a suit, you'll like Squid Game. Yes, I just spoiled a large part of the show, but I purposely kept some stuff out of context, partially because it would take forever to talk about it, and partially because it just allows you to still go in. I've told you some points of the journey, and you still don't know what happened in between, so if you get a chance and this sounds like your kind of thing, go watch it. It's on Netflix. There's a reason that this is on track to become Netflix's highest grossing show so far. So, if you can stomach the subject matter, I highly recommend checking out Squid Game. And for now, I must say adieu on this wonderful morning where I might just put these pieces back together. The more I think about it, the more I realize just how much I don't want to deal with my debt. I'll give it to one of my white roommates. They can do it for me. I'll see you in a bit, media lovers.